Stephen Golub, your reaction to this historic day where we are seeing Kamala Harris set to become the first woman vice president and the first Indian origin vice president.
I agree completely with everything your other guest just said. I guess I'd add it is significant, certainly as a model for all sorts of young women, for women of Asian, specifically Indian descent, for women of Black descent, since that's part of her ancestry also. It's really significant just to see someone in a position, in such a high position of authority, potentially the next president in various ways. That's a tremendous impact. More generally, what I just add briefly regarding the implications for India is that this, on balance, is very good. I know that President Trump was, Mr. Trump and Mr. Modi were friendly, but it wasn't in India's interest to have someone backed by white supremacist forces and who had endorsed and encouraged them to be the president. That was very bad for all communities of color, including Indians. It wasn't good in terms of visa implications. It wasn't good in terms of foreign policy to have a president who, if China came along offering a trade deal or offering potentially great investments for his companies and hotels or businesses in China, he easily could have turned his back on India. So this is very good for India, even more, certainly including with Kamala Harris being vice president, but even in ways that go beyond that. And one more point I'd emphasize is this is good for India and the world in that the United States has stepped back from the abyss of falling into authoritarianism, which is what the re-election of Donald Trump would have meant. Our democracy was saved by this election, with ramifications certainly for us, but also positive ramifications for the rest of the world.
All right, stay with me. Ray Locker and Stephen Golub. Also joining us on the broadcast this minute is Professor Brahma Chalani, Professor for Strategic Studies at the Center for Policy Research. Thanks very much, Professor, for speaking with us here on WION World is One. Your initial reaction to the latest coming in, the Associated Press has declared Joe Biden to be the winner of this presidential race, and what this really means for the India-US partnership.
Well, as Biden takes office, India is on the cusp of joining the US-led security architecture. Recently, India signed the last of the 4 foundational agreements that the US maintains with all its close defense partners. And the main driver of India's new willingness to build closer defense collaboration with the US has been China's expansionism. But Biden is expected to reset US policy on China. He will seek to lower tensions with China. He will seek to establish better cooperation with Beijing. And if he resets ties with China, there might be concern in New Delhi about Washington's reliability. And if he changes the Trump policy approach toward Pakistan, Trump cut off most security aid to Pakistan. And if the Biden administration were to relieve pressure on Pakistan, that again would make New Delhi have second thoughts about jumping on the bandwagon of the US. And there is yet another issue that we have to bear in mind. And that issue has the potential of souring relations with India. When Trump, in the 4 years that Trump was in office, he refrained from commenting on India's internal matters. Even when he was asked to comment on the controversial Citizenship Act, he said that was an internal matter of India. He realized that any statement that he made on a domestic Indian issue would give a handle to Prime Minister Modi's vocal critics at home. But Biden, through his official campaign page, has already slammed Modi's government on issues like Kashmir and this citizenship law, calling these matters inconsistent with India's secularism. Now, as you know, India has traditionally resented such interference in its internal affairs. This resentment predates Modi's arrival on the political scene. And if you have a Biden administration that seeks to build closer cooperation with China, seeks to relieve pressure on Pakistan, and criticizes India on Kashmir and minority rights, now that could really make New Delhi have second thoughts about entering the US-led security architecture. So there's a historic opportunity at the moment to get India on board to build this US-India security alliance. And if Biden were to flunk that opportunity, then it'll be a huge loss for US foreign policy.
A historic opportunity indeed, Professor Tanani, as you're saying, and a historic day for the United States of America. On our screen is the latest tweet coming in just moments ago from President-elect Joe Biden. America, I'm honored that you have chosen me to lead our great country. The work ahead of us will be hard, but I promise you this, I will be a president for all Americans, whether you voted for me or not. I will keep the faith that you have placed in me. Ray Locker, the common thread running through the reactions, the statements coming in from Joe Biden, even this latest tweet after the final result, has been that of reassurance, has been that of faith in the American democratic process, and that seems to be one of the primary factors that would have worked in his favor.
Yes, I mean, that's traditionally what U.S. presidents do. I mean, they go to places where there have been problems, regardless of whether they voted for the president or not. They try to reassure people. Presidents Obama, Bush, Clinton, the first Bush, Reagan have all done that. That's something that President Trump has done relatively little of. And while I do think his mishandling of the coronavirus affected his political standing, I also believe that there was just a general sense of exhaustion from many voters who were like ready to move on to somebody who's a little more comforting, a little more traditional. You can only have, so much in your face attitude, for anyone. And really on the part of a lot of Republicans, elected officials, they were tired of it too. They would privately tell reporters, look, this guy doesn't really know what he's talking about. We're exhausted by this. And then when the TV lights went on, say something to the opposite, but we already knew how they felt. So that's why you're not seeing a lot of Republican elected officials right now standing up for President Trump and his claims of voter fraud. I think they're ready to turn the page, do what they traditionally have done when there's a Democratic president in the office, fight for what they want to do. Some would call it obstruction. But I think they've been tired of carrying water for this president for 4 years.
But Stephen Golub, at the same time, given what we witnessed over the last 4 years, more so during the campaigning and the larger message put forth by the Trump campaign, are you surprised that Donald Trump managed to make this contest as close as it got? It was coming down to a few decimal points in some of the battleground states.
Yeah, not only am I surprised, a lot of people are surprised, and a hell of a lot of pollsters are surprised because most of the polls predicted a much more comfortable Biden victory, as well as Democrats doing better in our House of Representatives and Senate races. There are all sorts of theories floating about. I think for right now, it's really just speculation on why Trump and the Republicans did as well as they did. In the weeks and months to come, there'll be some serious analysts, research and the like that will make the answers clearer. But for now, there's a lot of surprise in the air, even as there is relief in the air that Joe Biden won. The implications of this, though, the implications of Trump doing as well as he did are that the leading implication is that Trump may leave office, Trump will leave office, but Trumpism is not dead. He'll continue as a force afterwards. The ideas that drove him, that made him popular, some of them very, very negative, and as I've said, racist ideas, not among all of his supporters, but among some of them, will continue to be part of our dialogue. We had some really, a few really strange people running as Republicans, believing crazy conspiracy theories, who got elected to the House this time around. So a lot of issues, a lot of problems will continue, unfortunately, as reflected by the fact that Trump did as well as he did.
Right, Professor Chelani, if I can get you in on the aspect that you were talking about earlier, the ambitious resetting of not just the ties with China, but with countries across the world. What would Joe Biden's foreign policy look like, according to you?
Few know what Joe Biden's foreign policy will look like, because he ran in the race, not on his own agenda. His main plank was that he is not Donald Trump. So it was about his character, the fact that he's not Trump, that the US needed change. So he didn't really present an alternative agenda to Trump's policies. So one doesn't really know what his foreign policy will look like. And also, we should not forget that he will come to office with a fractured mandate. In fact, the US has emerged even more divided and polarized from the presidential and congressional elections. It's one America and two nations. Even the electoral map, the outcome, in the different states shows how divided the United States is. And on top of that, the Biden administration will face Republican hostility, an unfriendly Senate, an unfriendly Supreme Court, and a Trump seeking to convince the 70 million Americans who voted for him that Democrats stole the election. All these factors are going to weigh on the Biden administration's ability to unite and govern. So given the difficulties that the Biden administration will face, and given Biden's own old age, he will turn 78 this month, I think these factors are going to be quite a burden on the Biden administration. And we'll have to wait and see as to what kind of foreign policy Biden will shape for his administration.
Stephen Golub, do you want to weigh in on this aspect?
Well, I think the professor's made some good points. A few matters I might differ with, though, is that Biden has had some detailed plans, including foreign policy. They didn't get much attention in the general election campaign because that's not what American voters pay attention to. It often boils down to who you'd rather have a beer with. And that's one way of looking at this election. More Americans want to have a beer with Joe Biden than Donald Trump. Not the only way, and that's oversimplifying, but that's part of it. But Biden did have some detailed plans, including foreign policy. More specifically, I do think we'll see Biden taking China, its economic, political, and military threats very seriously. He's not a lightweight. He's experienced. His leading area of experience is really in foreign policy, and the people around him are serious foreign policy veterans who know what China can be, who know the negative aspects of China's conduct around the world, including for India, and he'll continue to value India as an ally and a friend. Above and beyond that, I get that back to a previous point I made, in that it's in the interest of India and all of us to have a president who understands issues which Donald Trump didn't. He refused to read even short briefing papers because he's apparently incapable of that. It's an attention issue. And beyond that, he really is an unstable character, and you don't want that as the president of the United States, and an unstable character who turned his back on even the best of friends if it serves his own political, personal, or financial interests. That was not in the interest of India and the world. In Joe Biden, we do have a stable, knowledgeable, experienced person who values India and takes China very, very seriously. So I wanted to emphasize those points.
Professor Chalani, we're also talking about how this is a historic moment for the United States when we look at Kamala Harris taking over as the next vice president. We have spoken about how this will be a new chapter for the India-US partnership. What, according to you, would be the stumbling blocks right away, given the baggage from the Trump presidency?
Well, when Biden was vice president, Obama declared that the US-India relationship is one of the defining partnerships of the 21st century. Biden may prioritize deepening America's engagement with India. In fact, given Kamala Harris's Indian heritage, it would be ironical if relations with India did not flourish under Biden. Biden could accomplish what Trump failed to clinch: a trade deal with India. As you know, a trade deal between India and the United States has been under negotiation for the past year or so, and that deal never materialized. And the booming bilateral trade between the US and India now totals more than $150 billion a year. The US needs India to break China's stranglehold on key global supply chains, especially in the medical sector. India is the world's leading supplier of generic drugs. Another reason why India will be important for the new administration in Washington is that US policies over the last decade or so have counterproductively fostered an expanding alliance between Russia and China. That makes America's new bond with India most significant for US policymakers. India is assuming greater meaning for Washington because of this growing partnership between China and Russia. So unless the historic opportunity to forge a US-India security alliance slips away, I expect the US and India to establish an unbeatable partnership that helps to underpin a stable balance of power in Asia and the wider Indo-Pacific region.
Stephen Golub, Professor Chalani also talking about the need for America to reset ties with China amid the pandemic, which the United States has definitely been the worst affected because of. What do you think would the next 1 year perhaps look like under Joe Biden as far as the US-China relationship is concerned?
Well, that's a good question. Part of it depends on what China does and how China reacts. Will it continue to be so aggressive in the Indian Ocean, in the South China Sea, in terms of the border? You know, the border, what its aggressive actions towards India along your northeast border, all sorts of issues like that. I think he'll try to put, and trade matters as well. I think he'll try to put things on a more even keel with China. The approach he'll take will be steadier than Trump's, which again was mainly Trump's trade fight with China wasn't really about very substantive matters. It was more about what he could do to appear to be strong to the American public in ways that would help garner him votes. And I think Biden will take a view to trade and to all these other strategic issues that will have a longer term and less personal aspect to it, and that will be on balance good. But will we come out of this a year from now with a greater degree of hostility between the US and China, or somewhat smoother and friendlier relations? I think Biden's team will handle it well, but a lot of that depends on the actions that China takes, and those are kind of hard to predict right now.
Right, and speaking a little bit more about Donald Trump's handling of the COVID-19 crisis, Stephen Golub, first calling it a hoax to begin with, and then not even listening to the scientists and talking about firing the top American infectious disease expert, Dr. Fauci, just days before the election. On the other hand, we have Joe Biden talking about how his number one priority will be dealing with the COVID-19 crisis. To what extent do you think Trump's handling of the crisis has helped Joe Biden achieve what he has? And the scenario seems to have completely changed, if at all, over the last few weeks?
Well, I think the scenario, as one of your, as another guest pointed out, astutely pointed out, it wasn't just a matter of the COVID crisis. It's partly a matter of the contrasting styles. Some people were just burned out on Donald Trump. Every day it was something new, and it was often something nasty or negative or new scandal or something he was tweeting about. And one of the ways in which one of the impacts of this election is that I think many of us will just relax a little bit more. In some ways, the Biden administration will be more boring, even though it'll be dealing with some challenges and some big, big challenges, and that'll be a relief. So, when in terms of the past few weeks, the COVID crisis has gotten even worse here. Whether that contributed to Biden winning or not, I don't know. I think the long-standing incompetence and indifference of the Trump administration in handling COVID were more a factor than the past few weeks. And one impact I might add, as long as we're talking about COVID, is that I don't think it's an overstatement to say that hundreds of thousands of people who otherwise would have died in the United States if Donald Trump had been reelected will live because Joe Biden has been elected, because the Trump administration's policies and indifference would have continued long after January 20th, even with the vaccine on the horizon for next year. What Biden will do in terms of the model he'll set, the coordination he'll undertake, the policies he'll put in place will save many, many lives here.
Right. Stay with me, gentlemen. Just a quick look now at the latest numbers that are coming in. And there we have the final picture of what America's electoral map looks like. Joe Biden winning the White House as per the Associated Press. He has sailed way beyond the 270 magic number required to take over the White House. His tally at the moment, as per the Associated Press figures, standing at 284. Remember, over the last few minutes, he has grabbed Pennsylvania as per the Associated Press results, which has given him that comfortable 20 seats, taking him way beyond the 270 number. 284 is where Joe Biden's tally stands at the moment. Donald Trump with 214. Let me get in Stephen Golub quickly on this aspect of how this has been a neck-and-neck race, of course, and looking at the way the battleground states have been making this election too close to call, Stephen Golub. Pennsylvania going in the favor of Joe Biden. He's also managed to flip other crucial states in this contest, which have given him this victory that we are looking at. Your assessment of that?
Well, yes, he also flipped two states that put Trump over the top in 2016, Michigan and Wisconsin, very crucially. I might add that when all of the electoral votes are totaled up, there's an excellent chance that Biden will win Nevada and Arizona, and a very good chance that will come out on top in Georgia. So his totals will be even more than that. One other thing I would add, I don't consider this likely, but there is a route by which Donald Trump could challenge these results and take it to the Supreme Court with the help of Republican legislatures in certain key states. But it's very unlikely at this point, given the whole momentum, given the fact that most people are accepting that Biden won, that Trump would succeed at that. It's a very, very outside possibility, especially given that Biden's margin will include more than one state. It won't just hinge on one state. So that's a factor to just keep in the back of our minds, although it's very unlikely that it will come to pass in that regard. And that's where things stand right now, looking very, very good for Biden, and his margin of victory will likely increase. One thing I might add is that what this does portray about the U.S. or makes clear about our electoral college system is that it could have been even worse. It could have this could have ended up in some very bad, even more contentious directions if more states had been up in the air and if they weren't tilting towards Biden. So next time an American may say to Indians, well, our Constitution is so wonderful. There are wonderful aspects of our Constitution. But when it comes to picking a president, it can get very, very ugly. And we dodged a bullet in terms of it looks like we've dodged a bullet, despite Donald Trump's protests this time around, in terms of avoiding how ugly it could have gotten.
All right, stay with me. Professor Cholani and Stephen Golub, coming to you in just a short bit. We have another another development coming in from Twitter, where Joe Biden has now changed his profile description on the microblogging site. Joe Biden is now calling himself the president-elect on Twitter. That's a development taking place just moments ago. Joe Biden set to become the next president of the United States of America. To those of you who are just joining us, this is the clear picture, the mandate that the Americans have handed out. As per the Associated Press, Joe Biden grabbing 284 electoral college votes. What's changed in the last 1 hour, when you've perhaps been away from your TV screens, is that Pennsylvania has gone to Joe Biden. Pennsylvania has a huge chunk of 20 electoral college votes, which then took him way beyond the 270 magic number and gave him 284 electoral college votes. And there we have Kamala Harris's Twitter page as well. Kamala Harris set to become the next vice president of the United States, the first woman vice president and the first Indian origin vice president of the United States. There we have the Twitter page of Kamala Harris, where she has described herself now just moments ago as Vice President-elect of the United States of America. Let's get in a quick reaction now also from our team of correspondents on the ground. First to Mandy Clark, our London bureau chief, who's been getting us a sense of the mood on the ground. Mandy, I believe you have reactions coming in from London of the way the celebrations have panned out over the last few minutes to Joe Biden being declared the winner and the next president of the United States of America by the Associated Press. Give us a sense of what's happening around you.
Well, there is fireworks going off. Of course, a few nights ago were fireworks night, bonfire night, but there's a sense of elation and celebration. There was very much in the public seemed to there's those fireworks back Joe Biden in many senses. Of course, the government itself was slightly more aligned to Donald Trump, with Boris Johnson making a lot of overtures to Donald Trump, of course, in light of Brexit and that trade deal that Donald Trump would promise to. That would be a beautiful trade deal. Now, of course, all things have changed with Biden. So it might be slightly a rejig for the parliament to start those warm relationships with Biden, but certainly the mood in the public here is a sense of jubilation. There was in the British public, there didn't seem to be as warmth a feeling when it came to Donald Trump. He was seen very much here as a divisive character. So a sense of a return to the America of the past.
Right, and the optimism and the enthusiasm you're talking about on the streets of London has also been witnessed in the European stock markets. The same optimism over the last 48 hours, reacting very sharply to what at that point was a possible Joe Biden victory, but now has become a reality. Mandy, the European stock markets have also been reacting very sharply. Give us a sense of why this election has been this closely watched across Europe.
Because really America is still the powerhouse, the superpower that will really lead the economic forefront. What markets love the most is certainty. They hate uncertainty. Although many pundits and political experts predicted that the markets would actually prefer Donald Trump when it came to his economic policies, there was a sense that it could change moment by moment, that his presidency didn't allow for certainty. So that's why Biden's presidency gives that market a sense of stability, of lack of insecurity, and that's why we're seeing a bigger boost of a sense of security among those financial markets.
But the uncertainty definitely continues for London, Mandy, with a lot of things still up in the air, given which way UK's trade deal will go. But you've been telling us about the optimism that you're seeing on the streets, the enthusiasm. Tell us more about why London sees Joe Biden as a better pick for the American presidency as compared to Donald Trump.
Well, it's an interesting reaction if you put it in that context, because very much Biden has come out strongly against the British government's behavior toward their negotiation strategies with the EU. They have threatened the safety of the Good Friday Agreement, which allows for peace in Ireland. The Northern Irish conflict, long forgotten many years' minds, but that dominated the 1980s. It only really ended in the late 90s with the Northern Ireland peace agreement, the Good Friday Agreement. Biden has Irish roots. He made it very clear that when he was campaigning.
Right, and we will keep closely monitoring the latest coming in from across the world. Of course, this has been an election which has been watched with bated breath, not just in the United States, but across the world. A result which has far-reaching implications. To those of you just joining us, this is a historic day for the United States of America. Joe Biden has been declared the winner by the Associated Press. The president-elect has already issued a statement on Twitter where he has talked about how he will be a leader for all Americans, something that he has stressed on time and again during his campaign as well. We're taking a very short breather at this point. This remains our top focus. Stay with us.